Hello, this is Dr. Jimmy again, and this hopefully will be my fourth video in my History of Halloween Horror Nights 21. Now, of course, again, there are those of you out there who are obsessed with what t-shirt I wear, thinking it's a clue. Of course, I don't do clues like that anymore, but just to let you know, because Neil especially always wants to know, and there's something British about this one, you might like it. It's called Free Bates. It's got a picture of the actor who played John Bates on the television programme Downton Abbey, which I recommend to everybody. It was on for 6 series on BBC in Britain, and I think in the United States was on PBS. Masterpiece, classic. Free Bates refers to the fact that in one of the somewhere in the middle of the programme, maybe the third or fourth series, I don't remember exactly when it was, John got framed for killing his wife, whom he wasn't really in love with. He was in love with Anna, another woman, and she died committing suicide, and he marries Anna, and therefore he falls under suspicion from the police that he has killed his first wife in order to marry his second one, and she apparently, out of jealousy, arranged her suicide in a way that made it look like she was murdered, and so he ended up going to prison for a while. Free Bates because he was wrongfully in prison. That's what it's about. He did get out. They all lived happily ever after. So that's nice, except for the first wife. She's dead. But that's the shirt, what it's about. Okay, now that's out of the way. Let's get on to Halloween Horror Nights 21. As I just started talking about the houses in the previous video. And I started with the first house in Soundstage 23 that year, The Thing. The Thing, yes. And as I had said, the house was based on the film that came out the same year called The Thing, which was not a sequel to the previous John Carpenter, The Thing from the year 1982, but was in fact a prequel leading up to what happened in that film. I mentioned the film was released after the event began, but I got the dates wrong. Actually, the film was released on Friday, October 14th, 2011, which means that it was 4 weeks from the day Halloween Horror Nights opened that year, which was on September 23rd. So actually, 4 weeks later, the movie comes out. So anyone who went to the event in the first 4 weeks would have actually seen the house before they saw the movie. And so the movie was a bit of a spoiler for, the house was a bit of a spoiler for the movie in a way, or gave you a preview of the film you're going to see. I myself saw the film for the first time on the afternoon of Friday the 14th. Went to the AMC at City Walk and saw the film on my way into the park, and then went to Horror Nights that night. The first thing I did was go to the Thing house so that I could immediately compare movie with house. I've been to the house before a couple of times, but of course when I went in that time it was fresh in my mind, the movie, and my feelings are house was better than the film. There you go. The Thing had been at Horror Nights before this. People have been talking about Texas Chainsaw coming back after 9 years. Oh my God, that's too soon. That's silly. The Thing had been at Horror Nights long before, much more recently than that in 2011. Of course, The Thing had been a house called Thing Assimilation, Halloween Horror Nights 17, Carnival of Carnage. That was, 4 years earlier. And that, of course, house had been a sequel to Carpenter's 82 film. What happened after that movie, that was what that house was all about in 2007. But it wasn't the last time that The Thing had been there, because, of course, in 2009, they had a Thing scene in the Silver Screams house, plus they had a Thing character running around the Horrorwood Die-In. So The Thing had been there only 2 years before. There was also a cameo appearance by the dead character, the one that was played by Kurt Russell. His body, which was in the in Thing Assimilation, they used that same body hanging up in the Wicked Queen's chamber at the end of the Once Upon a Nightmare Scary Tales in 2008. So there was a brief cameo there by somebody from The Thing, weirdly enough, in that house. So, it was not like it had never been used quite a bit leading up to 2011. And no one seemed to complain that Thing was back then. Although for me it was my least favourite house of the year. Perhaps because it was intellectual property and we had all thought it was going to be all new, all original houses, because that's what they'd said the year before. But again, the best plans of mice and men and Horror Nights art designers have gone agley, and that's what happened. Of course, we talked about that earlier, the whole Comcast thing. You know, when they took over and everything else was decided there must be an IP, and they meant especially this one, which would be Corporate Synergy, the film, of course, helping to promote the event helping to promote the film by having this at the same time. So that was what that was about. And the house itself, as I said, the only IP of the whole year was in that soundstage. It was actually a pretty decent house. I liked it, although I didn't like it as much as Chris Redfield did. He would always accompany me to this, and he was always, that's not his real last name, by the way, but he always liked to go into that house over and over again. I think he really liked it. I think that was his favourite. And because it's part of my mission in life, at least it was back then, to keep him out of everyone else's hair, I tended to go through it more than I would have otherwise. But still, I did enjoy the house. As I said, I liked it better than the film itself. The film, if you saw it, you know, kind of hard to... you know what has to happen, because the first film ends, of course. The first film begins with the helicopter chasing the dog, and we all know the dog will go to the American installation and unleash thinginess all over it. And of course, this movie has to end with the same helicopter chasing the same damn dog and shooting at it. We know how that happens, and so oh dear, that's where, you know, we know that it had to ultimately end that way. So you go into the house. You start out in the Antarctic Thule base, the Scandinavian base, Norwegian, I think it is. And you see the base, and it's all cold in there. They did a very good job making it cold, and it was all frozen Antarctica. And you go into the base, and you start going through different rooms in the base, and you have like this sort of the break room where they have a pool table and all the little bar set up. That was all kind of nifty. And then you go into the kitchens. Now, I missed the first weekend. I think I talked about that in another video. I talked about how I missed the whole first weekend. It was the first time since 2006 I missed opening weekend, because I was in New York City seeing Broadway shows. In fact, when the event began, as I mentioned, I was watching Wicked in the Gershwin Theatre on opening night, the 23rd. So in this kitchen scene, there was apparently a scare in that scene that was their opening weekend, and on employee preview. And Chris told me something about it, but they took it out and they never put it back in. I don't know exactly what it was. Something came at you from the side, from another room or something. They took it out, and there's just a girl there with a machine gun shooting at infected people. But we go through the various rooms of the installation and various chambers, and they're filled with the infected people turning into things. And it's all quite nifty, because they had some awesome puppetry and animatronics here. They had the bending over backwards with double head split thing. It was quite disturbing in the movie, and that was coming at you out of an alcove. It was just, what the fuck is that? When you see it, it's like, my God, and trying to get your mind around the way, where's the body in that, the human body? It's twisted upside down backwards, and it's split in half. It's, my God. You have the one with the big thing coming out of the chest, I think, and various victims transforming into horrors, all quite lovingly done, recreated from the movie, the more extreme things that were there. Then you have a great big room, and you go through different rooms where you don't know where they're going to come at you, going through like storage rooms and things, and then of course at the end, there's lots of, like the girl with the machine gun keeps popping up, she's like the heroine. You have shooting, and you get in crossfire between you and the things, and you get shot at because of that. And then there's a great big room at the end, near the end. You have this huge room, and there's this great big beast that goes up to the ceiling. It explodes out, and neat when the timing is right. It was quite wonderful. And another horrid thing that was a leftover dog thing from the first house, Assimilation, was in there as well, and that was quite nifty. But then you go into the spaceship, and the frozen spaceship, and you go into the spaceship like they did in the movie, where you find this spaceship underneath the ice, and so you're going through the chambers, these alien hallways, and of course more horrible things are popping out at you from the sides, and people are shooting at them, and that's all quite nifty. So if you like the film, you'd love the house, and I like the house better than the film. And I thought it was a pretty good IP house for that year, even though it wasn't exactly my favourite house, but I liked all the others better. Now, in 2011 I started something new, and those of you who only look at my videos probably don't know about this, but I put it on my Facebook, and some of the people in different Facebook groups that like horror nights have enjoyed them. I decided to start creating cocktails based on every house at Horror Nights that year, and I've continued that every year ever since. And what I've done is I go to Finnegan's Bar and Grill, and I create a cocktail using whatever ingredients they have at that bar. The nice bartenders make it for me, and there it is. And some people want to go, those of drinking age, of course, go there and try out all of Dr. Jimmy's cocktails for the haunted houses that year. That's sort of drunken madness, I think, but and those who don't drink probably think that's rather silly. You can see Bob's Castle a lot easier tonight than usual. That's interesting. Usually it's off screen. Maybe something's been moved. Oh well. Some furniture moving by itself. I don't know. It's scary. Yeah. But she's not in it though. She's over on the daybed. But getting back to the cocktails. So I started that whole thing that year in 2011, and I'll tell you what the cocktails are, just so that you know. For the Thing, I decided to make something that was green in appearance, and it had Midori, and it had, I believe, it had Sprite, and I think some sort of vodka in there, citrus vodka, I think. I might be wrong. I know it was green, and it just came with a regular little, on ice, on rocks with it, and then a regular plastic universal cup. And they put lots of garnishes on it. They put like a slice of orange and lemon and a cherry to make it more alien, all sorts of different shapes. And that was the drink for that one. Very basic thing, because I was just starting out. I wasn't getting all that too creative. But that was the Thing cocktail that I made that year to make it look sort of alienish, because it had this greenish color. And it had sort of melon citrus flavor. It was not bad really. It was all right. I might have put some gin in it instead of vodka. I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look. But that was that cocktail for that house. So that was the house, as I said. And the second house, also sharing the same soundstage. Soundstage 22 was an original. All the remaining house original, and this was a rather spectacular one. It was called Nightingales' Blood Prey. Yeah. And this is set in World War I, therefore 100 years ago now. At that time it wasn't quite 100 years ago, but it would have been about 100 years ago, in the early 20th century. And the idea is that there are these creatures, they call them Banshees. Now if you know your Celtic folklore, a Banshee, I believe that's Gaelic for a beautiful fairy, but it's not really all that beautiful. It's a female spirit, a fairy woman, and it's connected to certain clans and families in Ireland or Scotland, and in Irish folklore particularly, these spirits are sort of, I guess you might call them household spirits or whatever. They're connected to a particular family, especially high-born families. And what they would do is basically, when a member of that family is going to die, they know about it in advance because they're fairies. They have supernatural powers. They can see the future, right? So they get all upset knowing that someone's going to die in the family that they sort of are the patron of. And they get all upset, and so they start screaming in mad agony, crying and mourning. And when you hear this horrible, ghastly wail of the banshee, this cry, you know someone in your family is going to die. And so it's an ominous thing. And it really isn't a negative spirit. She's sort of giving you a warning, a heads up. Look, someone's going to die in your family. That's what it's all about. She's not causing the death, although in various horror films and stories about them, when they bring Banshees in, they make them more sinister, like somehow they're causing this to happen. That's where it comes from. But what Art and Design did was take that idea and twist it quite a bit, and the Banshees are not nice at all. Rather, they prey on the dead and the dying, and they're sort of like vampires or some sort of predatorial spirits that feast on human blood and flesh. But they're clever, because they know what happens when these things, when monsters prey on humans. And you get the villagers with the pitchforks and the torches, and they hunt you down and put stakes in your heart, or burn you, or whatever it is you do to kill such a creature. And there always is some Van Helsing bastard shows up. It's always a trouble. So they have to cover up what they're doing, and they're clever. These girls, they're smart, and they know they've got to fit in a scenario where people are going to die anyway. So they go to places where there's death and destruction, famines, pestilences, but especially wars. They go where the war is happening. People are always getting killed off in wars, both military and civilian, so they know, this is where we will show up and feast on those people, especially those who are already wounded, and that way, it's like they won't realize what's going on. The humans won't realize that this is happening, and this is their clever scheme. It's sort of chameleon-like. In a way, it sort of fits in with our notion of Valkyries, the idea of those females who come down and take the dead from the battlefields, except this is more sinister. They're coming in to feast on the dead. Not dead, but the dying or the wounded. So what better way to hide than as nurses? That's the source of the word nightingale. You see, back in the Crimean War, which was in the 19th century, there was a woman named Florence Nightingale, who was one of the first who really founded the whole idea of nursing, and especially military nursing. And so the word nightingale was often used as a sort of slang or nickname for military nurses, especially those behind the lines. And so that's why it's called nightingales. So they appear in the form of nurses, and the whole thing is set in a pardon me, I don't want to be too sick sounding, or the nightingale come after me. You're dying, I'm going to get you. They appear in a field hospital behind the lines, probably somewhere in France, where a lot of the fighting took place in World War I. Terrible war, the Great War. Pointless war. Thousands of people died, the flower of young manhood in Britain and France and Germany, all slaughtering themselves for no good reason. It's really quite pointless, and that's why we all wear the red poppies in November, because it's to remember that the pointlessness and horror of war, and we shouldn't be doing this sort of thing. It's awful, and the price people paid for their country. So it's in one of these field hospitals behind the lines somewhere in war-torn France, and it's a British field hospital. So you go through the trenches. You go right into a British installation back in the trenches, and the first thing you see is this big, enormous tank, enormous set piece. Oh my God! And you go underneath that, and you're in this British hospital. I mean, the British, and there's trenches. You go through the trenches, and there's soldiers. There's some wearing gas masks, because gas was one of the weapons of mass destruction that was used back then. And they come out, and one of them comes out to fight you because he's confused, and shell shock is going on, all of that. And then you go through this, what they call PSD now, but it was shell shock back then. You go through the trenches and things, and then these start to attack you, and they're dressed like nurses. Some of them look like human women with those white World War I nurse uniforms, the big red cross on the front. And some of them are more hideous. They've transformed, and their faces have these horrific, bestial faces, big, nasty, sharp, pointy teeth, and they're coming out at you from different places. You go through the hospital, different hospital beds, and the dying are there, and some of them are being attacked and feasted upon by the nightingales, and some, of course, the nightingales are supernatural beings. They can fly. And there's some really neat set pieces where you're walking, and above you there she is floating ahead, and a soldier might be shooting at it as it flies overhead. Oh my God, that's amazing. Got that kind of special effects. There's one great big room in the hospital where there's like a plane has crashed. A plane has crashed, and you see that there's a red Fokker triplane with a big black cross insignia. It's the Red Baron's plane. My God, that's the Red Baron from World War I. So you've got a little bit of Germans there, and you have in that same scene there was a Victrola playing one of the old songs from the First World War, like those old songs, Johnny Comes Marching Home, all those old songs. we'll meet again, all of that sort of stuff playing, and there's some playing cards. Now, playing cards are also in that break room scene in The Thing. There was kind of a running gag, and many of the houses, if you looked, you could find some playing cards, because we all know about Lady Luck, right? So there was a little bit of homage to her, tying that in, and so you could find these in different rooms in different houses if you look for them, and you could find them here. Then, of course, you come to a spectacular scene. The most amazing scene, one of the best scenes in the house. And I missed it the first few times, but then when you did see it, when the timing is right, you're going down a long trench corridor, and ahead of you is a British soldier with a gun, with a machine gun, like machine gun nest, shooting at the enemy or shooting at the Nightingales. Then all of a sudden from behind comes a Nightingale, grabs him and rips him in half, rips the whole top part of his body off, and so what's left is from waist down, blood spurts and is torn apart, and literally ripping him in half right in front of you. It's like, oh my God, that was like the highlight of the whole house. My God, that's incredible. And then, of course, you go through more trenches, and this Nightingale's eating horses, you know, a military horse, and it's chewing on the dead body and pulling guts out, and flying overhead and swooping down on you. Amazing house, quite wonderfully done. And I did make a cocktail for that one too. There's a cocktail called the Allies cocktail, which was a World War I cocktail, which features French and English ingredients that were mixed together, sort of. In this case, it was gin and vermouth, sort of like a martini, but I decided to throw some German in there, so I added a dash of Jägermeister to make him out brown in color, and it was done straight up in a martini glass, gin, vermouth, and Jägermeister. It was actually quite good, better than it sounds. Okay, so that was that one, and next video I'll continue the houses.